to have Admithub here. We've been in conversation with these guys for a couple of months, and as you all know, and I often like to reiterate, I'm just going to put this right here, that a big function of the university that we can serve is sort of as that initial entry point, gateway, as we think about, and I was just in a presentation this morning where I put up, one of these sort of like massive landscapes of just all the products and tools and technologies and categories that are really out there today in the vendor marketplace and kind of the more entrepreneurial community around EdTech, and understanding that that can be a fairly overwhelming process for any buyer in any market, certainly in higher education, particularly as we think about applications and use cases and product roadmaps. It really behooves us as an institution to have a dedicated function and kind of mechanism that can support that journey into that marketplace. And so that is work that we love doing, particularly because we get to come into contact with companies doing really interesting work. And I think, as you'll see in the case of Admithub, companies doing interesting work where there has been efficacy research to back up and confirm a lot of those claims, which I think sadly in the marketplace today is somewhat rare. But I think they've done just some outstanding work with Georgia State, and they're going to, I would imagine, talk a little bit about that work, or at least allude to it. But social mobile texting platform that really, I think, addresses a ton of pain points, largely around what I think is just oftentimes just the problem of just communication. It is very difficult to communicate with students in ways that make sense to them, that are providing platforms and information that's accessible. And so this is one of a handful of pain points that they help address. So you will do a much better job of explaining it beyond that. So
you're doing a great job, Brian.
Okay, well, I'm going to grab my water. I'm going to sit down. So thank you all so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. And thanks to, can you all hear me on this? Or the video can hear me? Thanks for having us here at the Sandbox. We're really excited. I'm Kirk Daulerio. I'm one of the co-founders of Admithub, and just to give you a brief introduction, I'm joined by my colleague Brian Roman. I'll turn the mic over to him in a second, but I've spent the last 20 plus years in education, mainly in and around the admissions process. So I worked at 3 different universities in admissions. I was on the high school side of the desk as a director of college counseling, and then I worked for the Common Application for a number of years before co-founding this company. I'll give the mic over to Brian for a quick intro.
Great, thanks, Kirk. Before Admithub, I've been with Admithub about a year and a half now. And before Admithub, I was working with HubSpot as a digital marketing consultant for education. I was in Dublin, mainly working with universities in the UK and in Ireland. I inevitably got sick of the rain at some point, so moved back to Boston and got the snow right away. But was working with some institutions in the US, really around engaging students, and that's when I saw a lot of emergence in mobile messaging, particularly when I was in Ireland. It was all WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger. If you sent a friend a text, they were like, what the hell are you doing? So I saw a huge emergence in messaging applications, and when I heard about Admithub, what they were doing with artificial intelligence, it's kind of what drew me to Admithub, especially with the focus on getting students through to college. So it's been exciting working with a lot of great partners, and excited to learn a little bit more about, I know Southern New Hampshire University is a leader in innovation, and we're excited to have the opportunity to talk and work with partners like you guys. So thanks for having us here.
Cool. And just to give you a brief agenda for this meeting, we're obviously going to give you an overview of what we do at Admithub. We also like to have more of an interactive discussion around what your priorities here are at SNU, and then we're going to show you exactly how we can implement this technology to meet those priorities and to engage your prospective students and current students as well. We're going to show you a live demonstration so you guys get to play with it a bit as well, and then we'll talk about next steps. And we'd love to sort of have this be definitely a two-way street because that's what we do, or a two-way conversation. So we'd love to have this interactive as well. But before we start talking about what we do, just a quick poll. How many of you have unread email messages in your inbox right now? Okay. Jackie does not.
She actually does not.
She's clear. That's amazing. How about more than 10? More than 10. Brian's like, okay. More than 20? More than, Brian, how many? More than 50?
I'm not looking.
Now, how about text messages? How many of you have unread text messages on your phone? You do. How many? 3. Jack? One. Zero unread emails, one unread text message. That's amazing. But it seems by and large, most of you obviously have a lot of unread emails, but text messages are obviously an instantaneous way to connect, and most people, actually the research has shown that 98% of text messages are read within 15 minutes. This is even more pronounced for this generation of students, especially Generation Z. But with regards to any student in particular, and we're all in the same boat, right? So we're on mobile most of the time. We're reading text messages and responding to those messages at a much higher rate than we are emails. And this is basically what we do. We're an intelligent mobile messaging platform. We're enhanced by artificial intelligence to guide every student along a personalized path to enrollment. And we're available for them 24/7 to answer their questions, meet their needs, but we also proactively reach out to them to guide them along every step of the way through every enrollment checklist item. We're working with about a dozen universities right now, and Brian mentioned Georgia State. We can talk a little bit about that research study that we just did with them. But these universities are seeing some pretty fantastic results, everything from a boost in enrollment of 3 to 5% to reducing their summer melt by over 21% and actually quadrupling visits and on-campus programs, et cetera. So the key with all of this is really the personalization. It's having a two-way conversation. It's meeting students where they are and getting them help to them when they need it. So that's really the key. But I'd like to just sort of take a step back. I mean, we've talked to Brian and Jackie, and we've a little bit about SNOO's priorities and your current situation. And obviously, you're working with a number of different groups of students. You have your immersion students on campus, and obviously a much larger online group. So the priorities could be a little bit different for some of those. But we're guessing that they could be similar in some regards in terms of, obviously, you want to increase your yield and sort of reduce that drop off over the summer. You're also looking to build very strong personal relationships with each and every student and sort of helping staff get through those tough times where there's either those peak periods where they have so much going on, so much on their plate, or they're responding to repetitive questions over and over and over again, and really helping them focus on these sort of high value engagements with students to get them to complete certain tasks and activities. But I'm just kind of curious to kind of open it up. Is that somewhat accurate? Are there other priorities, other challenges that you're facing right now sort of in this enrollment process? Oh, we have the box.
So and this is all, do I have to do anything or just get really close to it?
Just talking to it.
So all these make complete sense and are certainly priorities. At the end of the day, our number one goal on campus is to get families to campus. I mean, the yield on families who visit and deposit, right? Almost every institution will tell you. So once we do that, so anything and everything we can do is about driving to campus. And so we talked a bit earlier about engaging, text campaigns. We started about 1.5 years ago. We've seen a nice spike in activity. So I'm very engaged in what you have to say today. And anything we can do that's a kind of above and beyond, maybe a bit different at what we're doing now. So yeah, very interested.
Great. And are there particular challenges that you and your staff are seeing in getting those students to campus, and are there certain time points where those extra sort of touch points or relationships would help?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is just the level of competitiveness in this market. I mean, think about being in the Boston market. When I say Boston market, I include Manchester. There's so many schools. I think of the top 5 cross-app schools that we compete against, and they include faith-based, they include privates, they include state institutions, so they really run the gamut. There's just so many institutions that sort of kind of look and feel like us, that to get a family to campus is really, really challenging. We're doing a good job of it. Our campus looks incredible. We focus a lot of our time and effort and energy on a really supreme campus visit experience. And we know in talking to families that they've appreciated what they experience when they come to campus, so we feel like we're doing it well. But there's always ways to tweak and enhance and do it better. And so it's just super, super competitive right now. And more times than not, it's a price point issue. So how do you become more affordable versus value? All those sorts of value props we're dealing with.
I'd imagine it's important to continue that conversation after, because I mean, people could be visiting beginning of junior or senior year, and then by the time they're actually
sophomore now.
Yeah.
So we're talking to 15-year-olds now, and so yeah, it's starting even earlier. Yeah.
I'd say for the online division, the reducing staff time and personalization is pretty key. So if you consider there's 11 term starts in a year. Do I sing? This is just tempting.
That's
Can you
great.
hear me? So
11 start term times.
11 starts, so we're always moving towards a start. And if you think of online where it feels impersonal to begin with, to enable a bidirectional conversation with a student that is considering an online environment, it really does have to be as personal and warm and welcoming as it possibly can. But text typically isn't, email typically isn't, so we do a lot of outbound calling, but just the time and the amount of staff you need to do that in order to grow and sustain that growth is pretty challenging. So the reduction of staff time, but I think the personalization on that is the most important part of that sentence.
Right.
I don't know if you want to add anything.
And actually, I'm just curious, what are the response rates on those phone calls? Are students picking up the phone?
No, no.
No, it's just our contact rate
Not
is
all the time.
60%.
60%. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad, but that additional
Outbound.
For me, it's another channel. If we push that to 65% or 70%, what difference does that make for us at the end of the day? So, since we're not doing texting currently, I'm less concerned about the staff time impact. I know this when it's automated. There's substantial savings, so it's not additional, but it's just that extra channel and increasing that contact rate.
Right. Got it. Anyone else? Cool. I mean, I think that, in hearing you all talk about some of these challenges and the priorities in engaging students, getting them to campus, reducing that staff time spent, in sort of futile activities or even repetitive activities. Obviously, you're not alone. I mean, we talk to a lot of universities, and these are just a few examples of some of the success cases that we have seen with increased personalization with this automation. But for example, we talked about Georgia State. I mean, they kind of were in a similar boat in terms of their main priority was getting these students to enroll, and they actually saw an increase in the students dropping off over the summer. It had gone from like 14 to 19% in the past 3 or 4 years. And so, but they also knew that text messaging was the best way to engage this generation of students, but they were also concerned about staff time. They said we have a limited number of staff, and if we start texting students, obviously we're inviting them to a conversation. How are we possibly going to manage thousands of text message conversations with a very limited number of staff who's already overtaxed with so much other work? And so that's where we came in and using this automation and using the AI piece with a virtual assistant to really help reduce the burden on their staff and also really help change student behavior to get them to campus. So we ran a research study with them in RCT with Lindsay Page, who actually wrote the book on Summer Melt. It's called Summer Melt. And Hunter Gelbach, who's a professor at UC Santa Barbara. And what we did is we built them a virtual assistant, branded it after their mascot. It's called Pounce. You guys will be playing with Pounce a little bit later. And we introduced Pounce to half of their admitted student group, and the other half went through the enrollment process just like they would in every other year. And over the course of the spring and the summer, basically at the end of the process, the results were pretty astonishing. And you can see here that in the treatment group, we boosted enrollment by about 4%. We reduced their overall melt by 21%. And actually, Georgia State had a record year in enrollment last year. They had the highest number of students enrolling in school history, and they had the fewest number of students dropping off in school history. And Scott Burke had actually said that to do that volume of messaging and to have it be a two-way conversation and have it be that personalized, he would have had to have hired 10 additional staff members to get it done. And so having Pounce sort of on their side was a major boon to their staff efficiency. Any other comments on that, or?
And I mean, Georgia State was an example where they were reading about text messaging. They had yet to make the leap. I had a conversation with Bowling Green about a year ago. They had been texting for 10 years, and they were using the solution and had about 10 to 20 student workers using it. And it was funny getting a text message yesterday just about the percentage of automation, and it's amazing how much artificial intelligence can do, and how you're reading conversations and a lot of the questions that students are asking around status and process, and to give them an answer immediately. And then when those other conversations that need more of a deeper human touch, to have those counselors take over that conversation. So we've seen it with some schools that have, like Allegheny and Georgia State, that have never texted before, but then Bowling Green, it was great to work with them and their expertise of texting students for 10 years. So.
Yeah. Yes, Greg.
I'm curious if you veered into the text message lane with parents.
Yes, we're just starting to. We're opening up Pounce now to the general public. So parents will be able to text with Pounce, get answers to questions, just like students would as well. For the benefits of the research study, in some institutions, they wanted to keep it primarily to students so they can then use the analytics on the conversations. When we're sending out guided conversations and helping them through the FAFSA process, for example. Obviously, the parents are going to be involved, but the universities wanted to see the back-end analytics on what types of questions students were asking and how many students were getting to certain points in the process, and what types of students were more interactive and what types of students were getting through all the way. But more generally speaking, yes, in terms of having parents be able to get assistance and not go to a website or click around or search and getting immediate feedback and answers, that's definitely something that we're going to be doing.
Just a question about compliance.
Yep.
So we are doing a radio test right now that uses a single direction text response. We went through a lot of pains in order to get that cleared because of text regulations related to students and privacy and so on.
Yep.
How do you get are you going to talk about that in this presentation?
We could. And actually, you want to mention the radio text message?
Sure. Yeah. I think I came across that text message, and I was actually I was listening to a Red Sox game and heard it on the radio, and I was like, text fresh. What's that? I don't know exactly. I responded fresh. I don't know if that was the same code. Fresh for. I don't know if it's the same code for everyone or not. But are you talking about like legality of texting? Okay.
So we were only allowed to do a single direction versus a conversational text, bidirectional between the student and us. We literally just pushed a text response, and from there drove them to a web page where they then inquired and became a lead, and then at that point we could talk to them. But up until that point, we don't do any bidirectional text at all, because I think there's a lot of concern about legality and compliance, and so how do you address that? What do you know about that?
Yeah.
Any advice?
So when you're sending out, so in that example, I am not, disclaimer, I am not a lawyer, and I'm probably not the best person to give advice, but what we've done with a lot of our partners when it's kind of an open source that you can just text in, we ask in that question, would you like to text with us, yes or no? And that gives them the explicit opt-in, and at which point you can receive text messaging. Nonprofit institutions are held to a lower standard on the TCPA Act, which pretty much says you can't spam students. But nonprofits are allowed to send if there's been explicit oral consent, which is actually NACAC says that if they apply or they inquire, you have consent to send them one message if it's about the core function of the institution, and give them a very easy way to unsubscribe to messaging. So at that case, a lot of our partners that have inquiries or applicants will send them an initial message saying, hi, I'm PD, your virtual assistant here at Southern New Hampshire, here to answer your questions and guide you through along any process. Would you like my help, yes or no? And we did that with Georgia State with their admitted students, and they had a 90% opt-in rate to that.
Yeah, we actually wrote a blog post on the legality of texting, if you're interested. It's riveting. Read it right before bed. So I guess, what this all boils down to, obviously, is the personalization. And there's been a lot of research on personalization, and actually Reisman's research is on the right-hand side here. I'm going to use this. Look at that. It actually shows in rank order, the top reasons why students choose to disengage with an institution during the enrollment process. And you can see here number 1 and 2 are really around the relationship. It's around the personalization. Students feel the college doesn't care about them, or they're not getting the attention that they need at the time that they need it. So what we have found in our work with universities, obviously, number 1, personalization works to a great degree in terms of changing student behavior, motivating them to act, and driving those enrollment metrics. But the key is really the conversational piece. It's building a personal relationship with each and every student. But how do you do that at scale? There obviously are a lot of challenges with that, as we talked about with Georgia State, and as I'm sure that you're all facing, especially in the online student community with thousands of students and a limited number of staff members. We also found, for example, that the most active times that students are engaging over text message, at least with us, with our virtual assistants, are after 8 o'clock at night and between 6 and 8 in the morning. So the exact times that you're in the office. So yeah, I'm curious, how do you handle that type of challenge right now with students sort of, asking questions and needing immediate responses at all hours of the day and night? So you staff around the clock?
Staffed pretty much Monday through Friday. We test Saturdays when it's getting close to term start. We'll add Saturdays and test out Sundays, but typically we're running from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 10 p.m., 10 p.m. at this point. But that's
wow, that's great.
Back to that point of staffing.
Right.
We are not entertaining text because one of the barriers of how much time it's going to take, but it could be a time savings for sure if we're using the right solution. Staff.
Yep. Right, exactly. It's amazing, though, that you have staff on the weekends and up to 10 o'clock at night. That's unusual, I would say.
Yeah, I was going to.
California, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to. We are looking to another issue is time zone, and so and I think some of that has been also in advising, and so there's a whole bunch of other issues. I mean, I can say candidly, it's somewhat of a question mark right now for us. I mean, we look at buying or renting office space in Salt Lake City and starting to scratch our heads a little bit and say, is this really the best approach, or is there other ways to do this? And and I haven't really thought of texting really kind of being a solution set there, but it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, Julie can certainly speak from the transfer side. I know from the freshman admission side is the way the relationship is built on text is the counselors. So these are very personal relationships that they're starting to develop. So it's based on territory. So each counselor really kind of sets up their own time frame in which he or she wishes to, respond. And they'll make it really pretty obvious, but they do a good job of responding fairly late into the evening. They're already up
Superstars,
anyway. Yeah, it's part of, I don't know if it's part of the job, but there's a level of expectation that comes with it. And they care. So there's a real investment, right, anyway, into wanting to respond as part of their overall managing of a territory. So,
I'm sure that they're obviously experts on the institution, the programs, everything. Or do they have specific guidelines on how to be answering those questions, or it's kind of
well, we do training. There's a certain protocol involved. So, but they're pros. They've done this for a while, so they understand. They're big text users anyway on the other end, right? Responding to, so we set up a training and there's a protocol involved. So, and the statistics are really good. The data is really good. There's incredible return rate on these campaigns. So they've been very successful. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting, in terms of the staff. Obviously, you're an admission officer. I did it for so many years, and the main reason I did it was because I wanted to connect with students and to help students through this transitional process. But I didn't want to do it at 10 o'clock at night. But it's at actually at Allegheny College, they it's a very similar story. I mean, obviously their staff cares very deeply. They're a small college, so they even placed a greater emphasis on personalization and being able to connect one-on-one with students. But one of the things that they found is that they were trying to connect with students over the phone, and they were, students weren't picking up, or they were spending long hours in the office just trying to connect. And then using the technology, their virtual assistant is called Chompers, after their alligator mascot. So Chompers was used by each of those staff members to reach out to the students in their territory to say, hey, Brian, your counselor, would love to talk to you some point this week about your application. What's a good day and time for you? And so to be able to sort of use the automation in a way to cut back on all the time they spent just in the office, cold calling students, and having them be able to actually set the day and time themselves and be able to connect right off the bat was pretty important to them. So it's just kind of an interesting link there. So I went back there. Yeah. So it's interesting. We, instead of talking to so many universities and working with a number now, we've been able to really create a framework. It's almost like a spectrum in terms of the level of personalization each institution is at. And we're happy to do a deeper dive later if you're really interested in this kind of academic material. But basically, a lot of these dimensions need to work in tandem. The student dimension, obviously staff and technology all working together. And it can be a challenge to get from one end of that spectrum to the other, but to really boil it down to the basics, you've got on the far left end, you've got institutions that are pretty much like the great and powerful Oz, right? They're sort of behind the curtain, pulling the levers. Is mostly one-way communication, really not much chance to interact on a personal level with students. And then at the far other end of the spectrum, the more scalable, individualized, personalized sort of method of personalization, you've got Jiminy Cricket, who is really sort of your personal guide on your shoulder, or I guess on your boot in this case, 24 hours a day, really helping guide you whenever you need the help, getting you the exact help that you need, the exact assistance that you need. And that's really our goal as a company, is to help each institution find where they are in that point in personalization and move them along the spectrum to the point where it's scalable, so that every single student can get that personalized attention. And so the path to that, which we'll talk about a bit, is for SNU, is to really create this virtual assistant. And we typically, as I mentioned before, branded after the mascot. So this is Petey. And students would save Petey as a contact on their phone, just like they would any other contact. And really the main goals for the virtual assistant are, number one, to help them with supportive conversations, guided conversations for really every enrollment checklist item. Number two is to get them on-demand assistance. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whenever they need help, whenever they have a question, they can get a response within 6 or 7 seconds. And then the last piece is also critically important, which is that targeted human support. So when a student needs additional assistance or needs to have an additional conversation with a staff member on campus or an advisor or a current student, we're able to make that connection and set up that relationship. And so how do then we sort of go about building these virtual assistants and using this artificial intelligence? The first part is really creating the brain of the virtual assistant. It's really the knowledge base. And what we do is we work very closely with your team, with some current students who know the institution very well. We obviously get a lot of information from your website, and we sort of input all this information into the brain of PD, so that when a student asks a question, when's the application deadline, or do you have scholarships, or do you have a nursing program, etc., they can get that instantaneous response without having to search for it on the website. And the best part about this brain is the artificial intelligence and machine learning piece, which is the more that students interact, the more questions they ask, and the more that humans are involved in sort of helping train the brain, the smarter it gets over time. So it's really amazing to see how incrementally smarter the brain of one of these virtual assistants gets every day. So that's sort of the one piece, is really getting them the assistance they need and having this information on hand 24/7. The other piece is really the proactive outreach. And what we've done with our current partners is we've built over 100 different campaigns. These are really the more supportive conversations, everything from helping them submit their intent to enroll form to completing the FAFSA process, getting their immunization submitted, applying for a parking permit, etc. So every sort of item on your enrollment checklist can be turned into one of these guided conversations. And of course, in the meantime, when you ask a student a question about, or sort of helping them guide them through the FAFSA, they might text back with a question, what the heck is the EFC? Or, I don't understand this. And to be able to get them these immediate responses in the midst of these campaigns, in the midst of these guided conversations is key to getting them to move from point A to point B and sort of getting them to change that behavior. And so one of the benefits as well of working with us is we've designed and tested all of these different campaigns, and you really have them at your disposal to really customize to your own institution, and also to create your own. I was just on the phone yesterday with West Texas A&M, one of our current partners, and he wants to start surveying students about their sense of belonging on campus and how they're feeling about fitting in, and et cetera, and getting them extra resources. And so we're having our partners really start to think outside the box about ways to reach out to students, gather quick feedback, and be able to analyze that data and then retarget further communication. So here's a couple of examples I just wanted to show you. These are, these guided conversations are typically branching conversations. This is a pretty basic one. This is applying for a parking permit. Do you want to park on campus? If you answer yes, you're taken in one direction. If you answer no, it's a different direction. Obviously, you might have questions in the meantime. Now here's a much more robust conversation, or this is our FAFSA tutorial. You can imagine the complexities of the FAFSA process, and to be able to work with each individual student based on the information that they have and they provide, and getting them and helping them on that path wherever they are at that point on that path, but getting them to that finish line is of critical importance. And so we have all these campaigns built out. This is a great one. And then on the back end, you're able to see the analytics. So you're able to see how many students are responding, what types of responses they're giving, what percentage of students are responding this versus that. You're able to sort of drill down into different demographic groups to really figure out how students are thinking and behaving. And obviously you're able to sort of edit those scripts as well in the meantime and be able to test those out and change things on the fly. So after we sort of build the brain, we build all these campaigns, and we've now developed this virtual assistant for SNU, PD. That's when we turn it on. We sort of flip the switch, and we start seeing PD have thousands of simultaneous conversations without your head exploding as a staff member. This is a great slide to pause on to see if you have questions. I want to leave this here about anything that I've just talked about in terms of creating that virtual assistant. And yes, it is alive.
It gets funnier the longer it loses.
No questions on that, but just about CRM integration.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are still EMIS, or
We are, but nothing else.
we're Microsoft, and we'll be Salesforce.
Yep.
So it's moving parts, but so that CRM integration piece. So on a single student record, we'll have recorded phone calls. We'll have all the email conversations, all the appointments set. Is it a direct integration with any different products, or how are you treating that?
We can directly integrate with the CRM. We've already built the Salesforce integration. And that's, the more that we can do that, if we can integrate with the CRM through an API, then obviously the conversations get that much more personalized. And we can do it, and we've started with other partners without the integration piece, started with CSV uploads with information and data, and then gone from there, and then built the integration in a few months. And that's sometimes the best way to go, because we want you to get started right away and engaging with students. But that CRM integration is key, and we're able to read data from the CRM and also write it back. Other questions so far? Okay, cool. Well, so we're gonna drive you through this process in a bit, but just a quick note on the team, because this is very important as well. Brian and I are here sort of as the spokespeople for Admithub, but we've got a really phenomenal team in Boston at the Harvard Innovation Lab, and basically the combination of the experience in the industry plus some of the top minds right now in artificial intelligence and machine learning, has really sort of catapulted us to this sort of cutting edge in this technological revolution. And we were actually named one of the most innovative, one of the 5 most innovative companies, education companies in the world by Fast Company, behind Microsoft and Duolingo. So we're pretty proud of that. But I think we're even more proud of the fact that this technology actually works. You know, we've seen it with this research, and we now have veritable proof that students are actually using this technology and it's working for them. I think that the deeper mission for us, obviously, we're all connected to education, and we're all very passionate about helping students transition to that next level. And so that's always sort of the underlying premise for whatever we do in terms of building technology. But our partners, our universities that we work with, we really want them to push us to a degree where, you know, we're helping build and develop the technology that's going to suit your particular needs and challenges, and also meet the needs of your particular students. So, you know, there's a lot of customization that can be involved there, and, you know, we're at a point where we want to, it's a true partnership. You know, we're not kind of coming in and saying this is how it's done, but we want to be able to work very closely with our universities in order to, you know, really blow this thing up and help every single student through this process. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Brian, who's gonna now give you guys a test drive on Pounce.
Cool. So we can get a few people. I don't know if anyone has Facebook Messenger, but we could get some people using Pounce on Facebook Messenger and other ones on text messaging. It's what we build. We want to make it platform agnostic, meet as many people as possible, so you don't need to download an app. Wherever they're spending their time, we want to meet them there. Facebook, Twitter, they have direct APIs with chatbots, and we're seeing other messaging apps going that way, WeChat as well. So if anybody wants to start on Facebook Messenger, and then I could also plug a few phone numbers into the text messaging as well to get it going. So. You want to do it? Okay. Yeah. So this is a Facebook code, kind of like QR code. So you can actually just go m.me.pounce or /pounce.bot, or you can kind of walk through these steps for a Facebook code. We're starting to work with a lot of colleges on using Facebook Messenger, but they could print out this code on any mailers. They could have it online if you have like a one-stop shop, and you can just scan the code and start asking questions. So it's a pretty easy way to get a conversation going.
You scan this?
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then maybe in the meantime, we can take a few if anybody wants to try it on text message.
Great.
They won't spam you. I did this last time.
Yeah.
It's fine.
We won't text you at 2 in the morning. Hi, this is Pounce.
Do I give you my number?
Yes. I'm just gonna.
After he scans that.
Can I text that?
You gotta make sure you get the whole thing in there, Steve. The whole circle.
Yeah, I guess that circle is pretty big right now.
You could do it on a screen.
Oh yeah. You got it.
So this is our kind of back-end Sandbox server.
I'll hold this up to you while you're
Thanks, Kirk. Great. So, and what's your name?
Sabrina Snoo.
So, here. Kirk talked about a few different campaigns. So we can develop as many campaigns as you'd like. We've created 100 ones right now, but I just put this one together real quick this morning. So should be getting a. Anybody else want to text? Okay, cool. What? Yep.
603-892-6784.
So you'll likely get a few messages, right, Brian? And then feel free to just start asking questions.
So this is kind of just a quick information gathering survey that I'm doing with Sabrina here. So we can see all these messages coming in, and with a lot of the surveys, they're automated. So we're actually going to be able to collect this information in your profile. And so, I mean, this is not the kind of the back end product that you'd be seeing. This is we're actually working on. We're going to be rolling it out to partners in the next week or so with kind of that survey breakdown that Kirk was showing there. But you're able to collect this information. So for all these students that are thinking about enrolling in Southern New Hampshire University, you can download a list to focus on that particular group of students and actually get some actionable feedback from students as well. Great. So. Yeah, this is actually going to be kind of confusing for students because we introduced ourselves as PD, but this is actually Georgia State's Pounce. I probably should have mentioned that.
This does not have PD's brain right now.
Yeah, so PD's not too loyal and pretty focused on Pounce or on Georgia State.
But you could feel free to ask. Sort of more general, I guess, admissions or enrollment questions, anything that comes to mind, and then.
And I can show you what it looks like for, we have like reviewers, could be counselors, could be student workers that a lot of times are managing these conversations. And when the machine kind of reads the message using natural language processing, it will match the question to a question in the knowledge base. And if it's confident that answer is that question is the right question, then it'll return the answer. So here's a few examples. One is your admissions deadline. One is the admissions deadline. We're 87% confident. That's the same question, so we return the answer. Do you have engineering? We return the answer there. So on the back end, somebody's going to just be giving this a thumbs up, and this is kind of reinforcing the AI and getting it smarter every time. So it's kind of like training a dog. If it does something well, give it a thumbs up, give it a treat. If it doesn't do a question well, then you're actually going to fix the answer. And then you can then match that question to an existing answer in the knowledge base or even create a new understanding.
And something that's really interesting is the fact that obviously students can ask questions in a million different ways, right? So they'll have a lot of different synonyms for the same question. You know, how much is tuition? How much does it cost? What do I have to pay? Right, and to be able to sort of for the system to be able to evaluate that language and provide the adequate response is, well, our engineers would say that's wicked cool. And another benefit is that as we're working with a number of universities, and for example, we have 30,000 students at Georgia State right now texting with Pounce. Every time they're asking a question, it's sort of a collective database. It's so students typically ask very similar questions. Obviously, the answers are different and very localized to your institution. So we localize and customize the answers for your institution. But a student that is applying to SNU is probably going to ask some similar questions to a student that might be applying to Georgia State. So that collective database of questions and synonyms is all being accounted for in the AI.
Just a question for in this automated scenario. I know a lot of systems will try and make it invisible that it's a virtual assistant. And it seamlessly transfers. So in all your applications, is it always clearly a virtual assistant?
Yeah, good question. And there wasn't a mic, so I'll repeat the question, which was, is it clear that PD or Pounce is a virtual assistant in the interaction with students? And yes. So basically, the first message that a student would receive is, hi, I'm PD. I'm your virtual assistant at SNU. I'm here to help you, 24/7. Ask me anything. Now, you could also, some universities choose to do it in one of two ways. They can either lead with PD. You could lead with PD and say, hey, I'm PD. I'm a virtual assistant. Or you could lead with your counselor and say, hey, this is Brian. I'm your counselor at SNU. I've also got my virtual assistant, PD, here, who may be responding to your questions from time to time. So you can sort of do it. You can choose which way you'd like to do.
Yeah, and I'm just sending the messaging to Sabrina. So you got into Georgia State.
Oh, congrats.
And
so easy. Didn't even have to apply.
That was your
fast app.
That was your one wish that I'm sorry there.
Yeah, right.
It's a doctorate program in chemistry. I
So this is the messaging that students got. You've been accepted to Georgia State. Check your email, and then we kind of mentioned that this is Pounce, your virtual assistant as well.
Did you get the GIF as well?
I think I got a link to it.
There should be a GIF. And actually, yeah, Georgia State, they did this last season to let students know they were admitted. They were like, hey, you've been admitted. And here's a GIF of like confetti coming down, and students were like, wow, I just got in.
Yeah,
and then they followed up with
the GIFs are a hit, and you can see the actually the engagement responses after you send one kind of spike. There is when students complete the FAFSA, they get 30 Rock Tina Fey with money raining down.
Yeah, that's a good one.
GIF. So I mean, the universities love being creative and kind of using GIFs and emojis, because as much as it's fascinating to talk about the FAFSA, it's fun to trying to make it engaging and really delight the students. So whether this is on kind of Facebook or whether it's on text messaging, trying to definitely help colleges delight students.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of our philosophies as well. Really, I mean, obviously we want to support students, but we want to make it fun, right? We want to make them come back and keep engaging with PD or Pounce or whoever. And we're taking direction from the students too, right? So sometimes students will ask the craziest questions. They'll say, "Do you like Justin Bieber?" And to have an automated response to get back to the student with a GIF or a Justin Bieber lyric, kind of makes their day. So we are sort of working in tandem with students as we are with universities and really making this an engaging process. Again, that sort of raises that level of personalization for student and strengthens that connection.
So once the integrates, way to say it, how does it transfer to a live admission rep?
Good question.
So I can see a whole bunch of different ways to do it. Right?
Yep.
You can post in CRM and say they have to reach out, rep has to reach out, or you can do it live, theoretically.
Yep. So one of the ways is connecting via the CRM. Another way is that a question, let's say a student asks a question or says, I'd like to talk to a counselor or whatnot. That message, when a student texts or is on Facebook Messenger or whatnot, can then be sent via email. There's an SMS to email gateway, so it can be sent via email to their territory counselor if you'd like to set it up that way. Some universities have a general email inbox that they want to send it to, but a lot of them send it to the territory person. So that person would get an email in their inbox with the context of the conversation and information about the student. They could just then click reply directly from their email inbox, type out their response, hit send, and now that email that they sent gets texted back to the student on their phone. And then at that point, you have the opportunity to, if you'd like, if it's a question that can be used to help train the brain, you can add that to the knowledge base. Or sometimes it's just, hey, I got your message and I hear that you want to talk. What's a good time? And, you can reply to me right here. And the student can then text right back and reply. And again, it could be sent to your email inbox and you can sort of make that connection that way.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out, I think you'd be in the same boat that if you have a person or a rep that already owns like a territory or something, you want to try and keep that.
Yep.
So I think in our case, I think the best would be as soon as the system wants to switch to a real person, to have that show up, because theoretically we're going to have a system in for bidirectional texting at some point. So integration with that with 5.9 has come up as part of Salesforce that might accommodate that. And just, just looked at a bunch of different options there, but I think ideally for us, as soon as that pops up, it pops up to the rep, it pops up to their text function.
Exactly.
They're communicating in, and if they're not available, I think that it can go to a second or then a public maybe after that.
Got it. Yeah, that's great.
How about within the international market?
Yep.
Experience with schools, not necessarily international schools, but domestic schools that are recruiting internationally?
Yeah, so text messaging gets expensive internationally. So basically what we would do is we primarily would operate over social media. So it would be via Facebook Messenger or Twitter DM. Or WeChat, if you're operating in China, WeChat, we could, if they have an API, we could link up with them. So the same system.
Are you seeing the same engagement levels, trends with international students?
We're just starting to get going with that on kind of a larger scale at Georgia State. So We don't have any kind of hard analytics on that yet, but we're going to be rolling that out for their next recruiting season starting in September.
I'd be very interested in talking to you about.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Would be a really interesting pocket to look at.
Yep, absolutely.
I have to run across the hall. It was very nice to meet you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, thank you.
Look forward to circling back.
Thanks.
I was reviewing your website, and I kind of got both that it was more, there was a retention model to it.
Yep.
As well as a sort of recruiting model, where out of the 12 schools you're working with, where's your balance?
It's mostly, so we typically start in enrollment because we found that it's the best way to establish the behavior with students, and then it becomes almost expected behavior once they're currently on campus. You know, they're texting with Pounce before they get to campus, and now once they show up on day one, Pounce is texting them and helping them through whatever they need to be helped with on campus. But I would say the majority have started in enrollment, and we've had a couple expand. So Georgia State's one that's recently expanded into student success and retention. West Texas A&M is another that is focusing on student success and retention. Any others?
We have a few that will be for the following year.
Yeah, and we've got a couple other schools have said that they want to primarily start in enrollment, but have sort of a small pilot with student success with currently enrolled students. So we can, basically we can manage however you'd like to do it. But I think that the eventual goal, obviously, is students are creating such strong relationships through the enrollment process with this virtual assistant. We actually went to Georgia State after the enrollment process, and we said, okay, students are in, so how do you want Pounce to say goodbye? And they're like, Pounce says goodbye? How's this? We need Pounce to be able to do more things. And actually, when we surveyed students, we said, what else would you like to, have Pounce help you with? And they gave us all kinds of great ideas, and they wanted to maintain that relationship once they were there.
One more, hopefully, quick question. So there's a bunch of different technology we can use to execute something similar. So I know that I think the big differentiator for you guys is focused on education and understanding that market. That's going to be to build those brains. That's going to be significant. Is there anything else in the system that's really different than the other tech out there, or is it really that education focus that's the differentiator?
I'm curious what other.
Do you mean just like in terms of using text message or?
Yeah, automated text messaging, automated chat, anything like that. So those systems exist in other places, but I haven't seen one specific for education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a significant differentiator. I just didn't know if there was anything else in your systems that were different, or if I'm wrong and this tech is.
Yeah, so I mean, we focus all our conversation. Yeah, it is that focus on education. Where that's kind of one of the challenges with artificial intelligence is when there's so many different factors. We're able to get kind of hyper focused within education and have data, actual data from CSV uploads or your CRM where they are in certain stages to say this is probably the next step, or when this happens, this is what happens here, instead of an infinite number of other possibilities with kind of a.
Once you do it for automakers, it's really.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so that, and I'd say becoming platform agnostic. I mean, we just started with text messaging last year. We're opening it up to Messenger and Twitter. But I know there's been rumors about iMessage and WhatsApp opening up chatbot APIs. So I mean, we're looking to. Skype.
Skype,
We can do Skype.
Yep.
Forgot about it. Yeah. So trying to meet students wherever they are.
Pony Express.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, we were just catching up on this and other things. This is great. Thank you all so much for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you for those who were on. I think it's been a great conversation. I think it's a tool that, I mean, for me, just has a very clear use case. It's kind of hard to walk away from this and think, what do they do again? This is really good. But I think we'll definitely be in touch on next steps. Our process is typically we sit down, corral, decide if there's any next steps or anything we can align on. And but thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. Appreciate it. Thanks for playing with Pounce.
Or PD.
For PD.